Jason Joyce presides over Calcareous Vineyards, which is located way down Peachy Canyon Road and sits on top of this beautiful bluff overlooking Paso Robles with fantastic views. Jason produces Killer Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Zinfandel. I highly recommend checking out Jason's wines. Calcarius gets its name from the calcium-rich chalky soil that is located in the hills surrounding Calcarius. So go give his wines a try or seek them out at your local wine shop.
I'm Jason Joyce. I'm the winemaker here at Calcareous Vineyard. Calcarius exists basically because of the name, Calcareous, which means it's a reference to the limestone soils. So this place was specifically sought out for an exposed piece of limestone that sits at the surface, which is much rarer than most people will like to admit. That's the thing about limestone, is when limestone hits water, it tends to dissolve. So in geologic time, there's not a lot of limestone at the surface of the earth. It tends to disappear quite quickly, in geologic time, not necessarily human time. But when we're over here on the west of the San Andreas Fault, where there's a lot of earth being moved up, we actually have a beautiful piece of limestone that we're planted on top of this mountain, and creates an extremely unique vineyard situation. And so it's kind of an experiment to see what would happen, on this piece of limestone to grow a vineyard. And it's been a challenge to grow a vineyard, but the results have been spectacular. We're only 12 years into that experiment. The vines were planted in 2002, but it's been, as far as my experience working with the grapes here, it's a truly extraordinary location.
You say what are some of the challenges?
Well, one is when you have very, very poor soils. Basically what the limestone is something you're not going to be able to grow on it. The pH is extremely high here. And at those pHs, a lot of the nutrients that the vines need, a lot of, especially the metals, your iron, chromium, things like that, they're not available to the plants due to the pH. So the pH puts it in an ionic state that the plants can't really absorb that. So a lot of the micronutrients that a plant needs to survive, it can't get here. So that's why naturally there wasn't anything here. This wasn't an area that's of agricultural use traditionally, because you'd have to be fairly intensive. But that's one very beautiful thing about wine and vineyards, is traditionally vineyards are something that you put into a poor soil situation, because wine is, as much as we like to pontificate about it, it is ultimately superfluous. Your village and your people will survive without wine, but they won't survive without food. So you're not going to use your best soils to grow your wine grapes. You put your wine grapes in a place where maybe you cannot grow your traditional crops. So that's where the wine grapes went, and the wine grapes are very hardy. They can grow out of rocks, and it's kind of what we're having here is that experience of having them survive in a very, very adverse condition. So it's that inverse relationship to most agriculture, where traditionally you think of agriculture as let's get as much out of the property as we can, which wine isn't necessarily true. We want to, in a lot of ways, minimize what we get. We want to have low yields. We want struggling vines that don't produce a lot of fruit. It's an idea of we want quality of the juice, not quantity of juice. I would say in the first 10 years, we probably had about a 25% death rate to the vines. One is learning how to handle that, and learning what the vines need, when they need fertilizer, when they need certain metals applied to them, in which way we can ever get it into the system. It's not a great growing situation for them, which is kind of by design, because you'd rather have the vines worried about producing fruit, which to them is the offspring, and less concerned with growing leaves and branches and things that don't necessarily work for making wine. That's That's great for the vine, that it's established and healthy and happy. But if you're trying to make wine out of the grapes, you're more concerned of, you want the vine to concentrate on making grapes and making the grapes as delicious as it can. Not for human consumption in their mind, but they're trying to attract birds and anything else that's going to take those seeds and propagate the vine somewhere else. So it's kind of our little trick to get them to maybe be thinking more about the future generations and not themselves, and then we, instead of the birds getting it, we get it, and then get a very special juice out of that. Also, people have their different ideas about what makes limestone such a spectacular soil type to grow vines on. And what I have found is the high pH of the soil has an inverse relationship to a very low pH to the grapes. And so a lot of the backlash I hear about California wines and the California style is they're all offhandedly rejected as, these high alcohol, low acid wines. And I look at the wines that we produce, and sure, I'm solidly in the 15% alcohol, but our Cabernet and our Syrahs are routinely in 3.3, 3.2 pH, extremely low pH, massive amounts of acid. It's spectacular. And it's kind of a bigger version of everything. There's more tannin, there's more fruit, there's more acid, there's just more everything. There's kind of, it's almost like the California IPA movement where the beers are just so big here. It's kind of like that's the wines we're making. Every aspect of it is much bigger. We're not sacrificing acidity to push for jammy fruit. Everything is bigger here, and bigger in a balanced way, So what's nice about that is when you have a wine with massive coarse tannins and a 3.3 pH, it's going to be able to sit down for a long time. And some of our wines have more than shown the ability to sit down. And we are only like 6 years into bottled wine. So 2006 was our first vintage from the property that went into labeled Calcarious wines. And they're still tasting beautifully. They're still evolving. They're not blown out and falling apart. They're still alive, very much so alive. And to me, that's the beauty of the acidity in them. That's the whole backbone of wine, is that you have that acid. And that's the magic here, is we're able to push for developed tannins. We're able to push for big, round, ripe fruit, but we don't get 4 pH and have to dump a bag of tartaric in it. We have the natural acidity is still there. It's still intact. Other places, you've been told, it's like, well, you should be picking at 23, 24 bricks. And, I'll go sample our Syrah here at 24 bricks and it's got a 2.9 pH. It's like, sorry, can't pick that because it's not ripe. That bricks is there and that sugar accumulation is there, but physiologically the grape's not ripe. The tannins haven't turned, the seed hasn't turned brown yet. Everything that makes it start to become approachable and consumable hasn't happened yet. So we have to wait a little longer. But it all happens in time and stays amazingly balanced.
So tell me a little bit about the history of the winery.
So Dana and her dad Lloyd owned a beer and wine distributorship in Iowa, from Des Moines, Iowa. And through that, Lloyd, coming out here all the time, was an early fan of Paso Robles wines, and would make trips out here to represent their wines back in Iowa, and made a lot of good friends traveling around, and really just loved everything Paso Robles was about. The more he came out here, the more he kind of fell in love with the place. And then through some friends, they discovered this property. When they discovered this property, that Peachy Canyon Road just came on was a dirt road. So, still a difficult place to get to, really rough. And
it's sort of in the middle of nowhere, which is really cool. There's a lot of beauty in these hills right here.
Yeah, that's what's nice thing is when you look around in the hills, you're not looking at a lot of structures and things. You're looking at kind of raw, rugged, undeveloped land, just oaks and manzanitas and hillscape. So it's kind of beautiful. The roughness of the land, which makes the soil so poor, that never allowed it to be agriculturally active. It kind of kept it pure until us wineries came around and started planting vineyards everywhere. But so they planted the vineyard in 2002, sold their distributorship in Iowa, and went full in on the money to create a winery. I got started as kind of a part-time cellular guy. I was a pharmaceutical chemist working in the Bay Area, San Francisco, biotech industry, and I was looking to transfer companies and wanted a break to get back out of a lab, maybe spend some time outside and doing some physical work and not just chemical work. And so I took a 3-month leave of absence to just work a harvest, and ended up ballooning from there to where now, 8 years later, I'm a winemaker here at Calcarius.
It's an amazing transition. And so did you go back to school for wine as well?
No. And I was encouraged by some people that, well, you need to have a degree, it's helpful. But I'm a strong believer that winemaking should not be a degree-based endeavor. To me, winemaking is a craft, and it's great to have an education, and a very strong liberal arts background is an absolute necessity to being a winemaker, because it's not just learning how fermentation science works, but you need to be able to master language written and speaking, because you need to convey what you're doing in the vineyards and convey what you're trying to accomplish in the wines. You need to have math and science background. You need to have everything, and that's really one of the beautiful things about winemaking. It's such an all-encompassing endeavor. You can draw from all sorts of knowledge bases to create your wine with. So to me, you educate yourself in a foundational way, and then winemaking is just a creative endeavor that is a learned craft. And you learn it how you should learn any craft, which is you start by cleaning and sharpening the tools, and then paying attention and asking questions, and then slowly over years and years picking up more responsibility, and learn the very fine points of the physical task of it. And then as you learn more and more, you start to more perfect what you're actually doing.
What were some of the vineyards that you were working at previous to Calcarius?
I've only worked at Calcarius.
Wow.
It's been kind of a lucky happenstance. Had different winemakers kind of come in and then take other jobs, and which instantly left kind of a gap for me to kind of climb up and take on more responsibility. So it was kind of a lucky thing. I really felt I planned on trying to go out and experience different ideas and different worlds and different parts of wine, but I kept kind of just staying here. And also I'm pretty happy about that, because the more and more time I spend in wine, more and more I'm very much into the idea of not worrying about other people and learning your own unique place and your unique job. It's great to travel around and talk to other winemakers and wineries and vineyard people and learn their experience, but ultimately at a small winery like this, what makes us unique and what we're trying to produce here is very much tied to this place and this property, and what it takes to make wine here at this exact location isn't necessarily a cookbook you could take anywhere else. It's very much part of this place. Calcarius is really what matters, and it's this 100-acre property that we're on that I feel is extremely unique. And as a small growing winery, it's really nice that we get to have that direct interaction with our consumers. They come here to taste the wine and see the place, and so everything else kind of fades away, and they get to know our story and our wines and how that comes from this place.
Right, it seems like your vines are actually doing, they're not only with the calcareous soil, but they're on slopes a lot around here too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you guys so it's almost like that mountain fruit where it's really digging down for its water?
Yeah, what's nice to me about the slopes is you get such a difference from one block. So there may be one block of 2 acres of Syrah, but the top and the bottom evolve in a very different way. One, just the gravitational effects of the water, the bottom and top. You have, wetter soils down at the bottom and then drier at the top. Warmer and cooler nights, the flow of the air, things ripen at different rates, and allow us to kind of pick and choose, especially during harvest. A 1 acre block, we might pick 3 to 4 times, depending on how far down that slope we're going to go. And at other times, you may pick the whole thing because there is such a big difference between the top and the bottom. Then just out of your own property and your own vines, you get a much wider expression of the variety as opposed to the whole thing all being kind of the same. Mm-hmm. You may have riper, higher sugar levels at the top and much more advanced tannins. And at the bottom, you may be a little lower sugar, tannins a little coarser. And by being able to have those things picked at the same time and capturing those different essences of the grapes, you're making field blends that are much larger in scale as opposed to a much narrower pattern. Usually if you pick everything on a flat surface that's all pretty much at the same point of ripening, you're getting less range of expression from the vineyard.
Sure. Tell me a little bit, what is Calcarius known for as far as the wines you produce?
The wine, it depends on who you ask, kind of, because one nice thing is we never really establish ourselves as a single style house. So I make Rhones. The original founder, Lloyd Messer, who founded this with his daughter Dana. They were the owners, and Lloyd passed away in 2006. But his original vision for this was to be a Bordeaux-based varietals. So we have Cab Franc, Merlot, and Malbec on the property, and that was really what he wanted to pour. That's what he really wanted this place to be known for. But he also planted Syrah, Grenache, and Mourvedre, and Chardonnay on the property as well, just to see what would work and what wouldn't. And to me, it's allowed me to have this huge range of things to make. We also make a Pinot. We also make a Zinfandel and a white Rhone blends. So we haven't really narrowed in, and different people have come for us for different reasons. We have people that love our Zinfandel, we have people that really love our Rhones, and then we have our probably flagship wine, the Lloyd Bordeaux blend from our estate. Has a pretty big following of people looking for a Bordeaux style blend. So it's nice because that's another thing that keeps me from becoming too cookie cutter in the approach. As you learn that each style of wine, each variety has its own likes and dislikes, basically, in the way you ferment it and the way you treat it in the winery. So you're constantly having to retrack your mind. You can't just say, all right, this is how we process fruit, and we use this fermenter and this yeast and this style and everything, just go. You're constantly, throughout harvest, having to realize we're back to a different variety that may need a completely different protocol. So to me, that's pretty nice, and we allow a wide range of styles to develop.
It's interesting. Your winery, Calcarius, is the first I've come across that will actually produce Chardonnay, Zinfandel, Pinot, and Rhone-style wines. I haven't seen that with some of the other wineries up here. It's typically just Rhone-style wines, or they're not producing that single varietal typically.
Yeah,
I think that's cool. I think
it's cool. It makes sense why you wouldn't do it, because to me it is a much more juggled and frantic harvest. It's a lot to be on top of, and a lot to constantly remind yourself of making things in a varietal style, as opposed to just let's rinse and repeat and do exactly what I do with the Zin, do it to the Syrah, and do it to the Cab. You can't act like that. So during harvest, it's interesting because you have to constantly be on top of that. And then so much of owning and operating a winery is marketing and sales and message, and it's a difficult message to get out there. As we make wine, what kind of wine do you make? Well, we make everything, and that's not only is it difficult to pull off, it's difficult to get that message out there and establish your brand, establish who you are, any type of identity. So I can see why most people wouldn't want to do it our style. I feel very lucky that that's the style that's here, because it does give me that chance to, not get in a rut and not just do the same thing all the time. It's always something different. So to me, that's a much more fun and exciting way to go about it.